Hello, welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are so very happy to have you here with us today. Those of you that don't know me, I am your host, Cece Schatz. I'm the doyenne of relationship building, and we're on the goingsolomedia.com. But we have something. Sorry, we had some backfeed going there, but we've got a very important topic and a very important guest with us today, and I want to waste no time whatsoever. We are talking about domestic violence because, as we're moving into October, October is our domestic violence month, and so you're going to be seeing a great deal of shows with regards to that. We are associated with the divorcecoalition.com, and any of those individuals that you feel that you may need some additional assistance, we have wonderful hosts and coaches there and wonderful shows that you can listen to. So you want to definitely check out that divorcecoalition.com. But let's get on with our show because we've got a lot to discuss here. We're talking about, are you a victim with emotional abuse? And we have Jackie Pilossoph and am I saying no? Pilossoph, Jackie Pilossoph. I do apologize. So Jackie Pilossoph, she has an MA and she's the founder of Divorce Girls Smiling, divorcegirlsmiling.com. So check out her website. She, this company, she connects people facing divorce with, and she vents divorce professionals to really come on her podcast that she has, which is called Divorce Girls Smiling, and also on her website. So anyone that's truly associated with Jackie, she truly makes sure that they are who they say they are, and number one, do they know their stuff? And so that's very, very important as we're moving forward in this important topic of victim of emotional abuse. So welcome to the show, Jackie.
Cece, thanks so much for having me, and thank you for calling me a very important guest.
You are a very important guest. You're a very important person because I tell you what, there's no, individuals like you, and we have many of them here on the platform, they really give of their time and their self, trying to really help individuals go through a very tough time in their lives. And so, of course, you are, very special with regards to that. But let's talk about a little bit before we start on the subject. I want people to know about you and connect with you. So why do you have this passion for helping those through divorce? And you started the Divorce Girl Smiling. So tell us a little bit about you and what your passion is and why you do what you do.
Sure. So I got divorced about 17 years ago. And my background is that I'm a journalist. I was a former TV reporter. So when I got divorced, writing was the thing that made me feel good. It saved my life. And so I started writing. And when I got divorced, my kids were 3 and 5. I had no family in town. I didn't know one person who was divorced in my community, and I felt really all alone. And at the time, there really wasn't like Google even, I don't think. It was like 2007. So right on the border there. So I don't even remember if people were Googling yet. Maybe just starting to. But there really wasn't anything out there, and I felt very alone. And so I saw this niche to help people like me because I really didn't want people to feel this way anymore. It's a terrible, horrible, lonely, depressing feeling so alone. So I just started writing, and Divorce Girl Smiling was a blog. And then it became a podcast and a mobile app and a website. And then I started partnering with all of these wonderful divorce professionals because it's hard to find people who you can trust. And so I vet them really well, and I make sure that nobody is on Divorce Girl Smiling who I wouldn't do business with myself. So it's really become my brand, my passion. I just love it because I truly feel like I'm making a difference, helping people feel less lonely and alone.
That's wonderful. It's funny when you say that because I got divorced in '08. So you were just a year ahead of me. And exactly the same thing. I felt exactly the same way, which is why I started into this path, and it's now gotten me into more into the media. But exactly, we want no one to feel. I mean, that's what our Going Solo network is all about, is so that you feel empowered. You don't feel like you're by yourself, and that you're not going through this difficulty by yourself. So I truly appreciate you and all that you do. And this subject we're going to talk about today is really a hard one because it's a victim of emotional abuse. So let's talk about that a little bit. So what is that? What is emotional abuse?
Okay, so before I answer that question, I want to say a couple things.
Okay.
I think in the coming weeks, because it's Domestic Violence Month, you're going to have all these guests on here, professionals, talking about physical abuse and what to do and how to get to a shelter and all this. So, for my part, I thought I will talk about a kind of abuse that is tricky because you're not being punched in the face, but you're really being punched emotionally. And so a lot of people say, well, really, am I a victim of emotional abuse? What is that really? Toughen up. You got to get tough. Well, that's true, but you're being abused. And so I'm going to give examples of emotional abuse. And I don't want people listening to take it lightly. And I want them to realize that they're a victim too. If you hear things that's going on with you, you are a victim. And don't underplay it and think, oh, I need to just brush it off. So that was why I chose this topic. And the second thing I want to say is I want to tell your listeners that I'm not a therapist. I don't have a degree in psychology, and I'm a journalist. And so over the years, through my column in the Tribune that I had for several years, I interviewed hundreds of therapists, and that's kind of how I got to know all that I know. So I just want to clarify that the information that I'm going to give is not coming all from me. Yes, I'm going to give my opinions and what I experienced and what I've seen, but it's coming from a therapist who wrote an article for Divorce Girl Smiling, and her name is Brittany Baker. And Brittany is a therapist on Chicago's North Shore. She's wonderful. If you are interested in talking to her, you can find her at Nick's Baker. I believe it's nicksbaker.com is her practice. And so I just want people to know a lot of this information is through an interview that I did with Brittany, but I do have other experience personally and through talking with others about emotional abuse. So with that said, okay, that was kind of long-winded.
So that we make sure we do our disclaimer too. Nothing discussed today constitutes mental, religion, legal, and or financial advice. Should you seek advice, consult a professional directly. So just so that you know, this is the opinion of the individual that's speaking, and maybe not necessarily yours. So let it. So be it. Well, I always say, take what you want and throw the rest away. Absolutely, right?
Absolutely. So, what is emotional abuse? So, according to Brittany, and I would agree with her, emotional abuse is when an individual exerts control, creates fear, and isolates another through behaviors and interactions that either belittle them, criticize them, humiliate them, or manipulate them. And when emotional abuse occurs, one person is using emotion to gain power over another, and it is a form of psychological abuse. It can come in many forms that range from threatening, yelling, name calling, gaslighting, invalidating someone's feelings, acting jealous. It can be them speaking poorly about you to others online, even or in front of you. And the aggressor could also be threatening to harm themselves and blame you. I mean, the list goes on. There are so many different things. But the difference between emotional abuse and physical abuse is that if someone's being physically abused, they're going to be walking around, like, tell me if I'm right, Cece, with like a bruise on their arm or a black eye. And this is what we think of when we think of abuse. But emotional abuse is something that the outside world can't really see. And so, in a way, it's just as bad, if not worse, because the person is thinking, well, really? Do I have a right to be upset about this? And you start to doubt yourself. And when I look back on the way I was treated, I definitely was a victim of emotional abuse, but I just thought, toughen up. You're fine. You're being too sensitive. And now I'm really mad at myself that I did that, but I didn't know. So that is what emotional abuse is.
So is that the same as mental abuse?
So some people use the terms interchangeably. So, yes, they fall into the same category, but and they all fall under psychological abuse, which is coercive, manipulative, disorienting to achieve control or power over another person. But mental abuse targets the survivor's sense of reality and changes thoughts about oneself or the environment in ways that disempower an individual. In emotional abuse, the aggressor uses feelings to manipulate or create a sense of control over another. And both are psychological abuse.
That's very, very interesting. So why do people engage in emotional abuse?
So first I'm going to tell you what Brittany said, and then I'm going to tell you why I think, and it is kind of the same, but I'll give her expert opinion first. So emotional abuse is used to gain power or control over one another, like someone else. I've said that a couple of times. And it can seem like the aggressor is a bad person who wants to hurt the other person. And that's actually not true. So she says, we often find that the perpetrator experienced emotional abuse or trauma growing up, watched this behavior modeled for them in childhood, and has formed a personality disorder or other mental health disorder for various reasons. And Brittany says this does not excuse any bad behavior, but it's just the reality. It explains why it's happening. It is always the aggressor's responsibility to work on themselves, to heal these wounds, and to show up differently for people around them. But unfortunately, if they're a perpetrator of emotional abuse, they haven't really done that. And so I experienced this. I was definitely a victim. I think that people who emotionally abuse people are people with low self-esteem, people who are trying to work out their own issues. Like Brittany said, they are just suffering from these childhood traumas, and they're just taking it out on you because they don't know any other way. This is their way of coping, and this is all they know. And it's so sad. And you just have to hope that the cycle does not keep repeating. And honestly, I feel sorry for the perpetrator, but again, I want to stress, I'm not excusing the behavior. I don't want people listening to think I'm saying it's okay, just understanding where this is coming from so that you have a sense of, your husband or wife isn't the worst person on earth. They need help and they haven't dealt with it.
Yeah, sometimes it's the awareness, right? It's the awareness of knowing what's happening. So sometimes if we are aware that, okay, wait a minute, something's not right here, we can understand, number one, what is it? Is it emotional abuse, mental abuse? What exactly is it? And then if it is this, and we know the person's background, we understand where they're coming from, then we can have a little bit of a better understanding of what's going on in our lives. So maybe we can take action of how we can correct this or how we can move forward in our lives with this. So, it's not saying that maybe you don't want to divorce your partner because of this. Maybe it's something that you can go together, get counseling. They can go separately, get counseling. Maybe it's something that can be worked on, but sometimes it gets to the point where that you just can't do that. It's gotten beyond that, and that's what happens in divorce. So I think this coming month we're going to be really focusing on awareness and letting people know these particular situations, and if this is happening to you, you resonate with it, then maybe you can, seek help, get help with it, and try to get through it.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, people usually find all this stuff out when they're going through a divorce already. Because when you're going through it, as somebody who knows, you think it's you. You think you're being too sensitive. You think, well, maybe he's right. Maybe I am lazy and need to go back to work. Maybe, you start to doubt yourself, and that's such an unhealthy path to go down. And so, unfortunately, people end up getting divorced, and then they learn about in therapy, oh, I was emotionally abused and I didn't even realize it at the time. So, Cece, I'm hoping that people are listening to this and thinking, oh, now they're one step ahead.
Right. So can you share with us some signs where you might be, a victim of emotional abuse?
Okay, so if people are listening and they're thinking, like, am I? Yeah, I'm not sure. Here are some signs to look for: decreased self esteem and self confidence, isolation from your friends or family. A lot of emotional abusers will try to isolate you because they don't want your friends or family to give you advice. Being monitored in different ways or experiencing a loss of privacy, like the person has to be in your business all the time. He's checking your phone, he's looking at your bills, he's looking at your bank account. Maybe another symptom is lacking independence or feeling controlled financially. Another one is questioning your sense of reality, feeling like you're forgetting things often, feeling like almost like you're going crazy. Other signs include being called names, being criticized, being made fun of in front of your friends. Another symptom is he might be threatening you with violence. He might be saying, if you leave me, I'm going to commit suicide. I can't live without you. You're everything to me. Another symptom is experiencing passive aggressiveness. Oh, I can't stand this one. I once had a boyfriend call me the nastiest name, and he did it with a smile. And I swear, Cece, it made me so sick. I almost wanted to vomit. Like, at least if you're going to call me that, say it with anger. Another sign is depression, anxiety, maybe substance abuse or misuse or abusing alcohol or drugs or pot or whatever your go-to is. Another sign of abuse is constantly feeling like you have to defend your spouse, who is the perpetrator, to others. Oh, he was just kidding. He doesn't mean all that stuff he said, because maybe someone's friends are saying, like, he's really not nice to you in public. Oh, that's just the way he is. Well, if you have a problem with that, then you're being emotionally abused. And then the last symptom and sign that Brittany wrote in this article was accepting a lot of the blame and experiencing a lot of guilt. For example, my husband takes care of us. I get to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm allowed to stay at home with the kids. I have this wonderful life. What is he really doing that's so wrong? If he has to vent and get it out off of his chest, that's okay. And that is not okay. That's what I want people to know. So that's it.
Yeah, it's a lot. And for when you start thinking about some of those things, right? And when you're looking at relationships and you're thinking to yourself, because I know when I went through my divorce, I didn't realize a lot of these boxes were ticked for me, and I didn't realize at all. And I was very fortunate to have a counselor that was my neighbor, and she would come over and we would drink a little wine and talk a little bit, and finally, eventually, she got very quiet and looked at me and she said, "You do realize you were abused. You know, this is abusive behavior."
And Cece, did you start crying? Like you just couldn't believe, like I would just have started bawling when you realized
I was just so
very
shocked.
intense feeling. Yes.
Yeah, I was just shocked. I mean, I was like, then I started putting it together, and actually, terrible to say that it almost was comforting to know that I wasn't nuts. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was being oversensitive, irrational,
Mhm.
all these things that he might have called me.
Yeah,
And
like, oh, you're so dramatic.
yeah,
Stop the drama.
right,
Uh,
right. Yeah. So
and
all of
it's
a sudden
almost
it started like,
overwhelming. Yeah. And isn't it almost overwhelming when you realize it? And you're right, it's comforting, like, wow, I'm validated. I'm not going crazy. And this isn't normal. And I deserve to be treated better because we all live in our worlds. And what's happening to us becomes normal. So you kind of think that's the way it's supposed to be. It's normal because it's been that way for such a long time. And that's why I think it's very hard for victims of emotional abuse to realize that this is not acceptable behavior.
mhm.
A husband and wife should treat each other with respect, with love, with kindness. And I'm not saying every marriage is perfect, but if the norm in your relationship is that you're constantly being belittled, made fun of, put down, that's not normal.
Right. The other thing is too is sometimes what I found is that they 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 try to switch it and make it like you did this, that you said these things, and then I remember thinking, well, I never said that. I don't remember saying that. I don't remember doing that. And if I said something, I was like loving or I was teasing because you are going to tease, you are going to say little things, you are going to have stuff go on, in your life that, but but I was like, wait a minute, this is if this isn't me,
So
so
I believe that's called transference. I've heard therapists call it transference, where your spouse is doing something, like let's say a spouse is cheating, and then he'll say to you, well, I know that you've been cheating on me. And the person's like, what? Are you crazy? And really, what they're doing is taking those feelings of guilt and putting it on their spouse because they don't know how else to deal with it.
yeah, yeah. So that's a good point. So I'm glad that we brought that up because I think that that's important because I think that transferring happens a great deal when you start to recognize, wait a minute, something isn't right here. Then they start pushing the blame on you. They try to they turn it around and like, well, you did this and you did that and whatever, and justify their behavior. And so the reality is we shouldn't take ownership of their behavior. We take
Absolutely.
ownership of our own. So that leads me to the next question. And the next question I had was, what action can we take if you really do feel like you might be a victim?
So obviously the answer to this is you need to reach out for help. But what I will say, and what Brittany said in the article, is that this is the scariest and most challenging step. And that's why a lot of people stay, because they're scared of change. They're scared of their spouse. And really, they have such low self-esteem at this point that they don't really believe that they can do it on their own and actually go through it.
Mhm.
Many survivors have been threatened with violence, humiliation, smearing, abandonment, and judgment. And so when individuals are in the abuse cycle, they lose their sense of self and reality. And the abuse often leads the survivors to believe that they're not good, they're not whole, they're not worthy, and they need the abuser in their lives. So survivors have to remember the lack of self-worth or the feeling that they're bad is a function of the abuse cycle, and it's not true. And she also wrote here, according to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, those in abusive relationships return an average of 7 times before severing ties completely. So professionals, therapists, case managers, organizations, lawyers, doctors, financial advisors can help somebody take the necessary steps to leave. And survivors can also reach out to their support network. And she said, I caveat this by saying that not everyone will be a part of the support system because unlike physical abuse, there's no there are no visible marks, and people may not understand, and they might discount the survivor's experience. I mean, I remember someone said to me, like, well, why are you getting divorced? I mean, is it that bad? Like, did he hit you? And I was like, wait, what? So every situation is different. And don't let anybody minimize your unhappiness and your feeling that the behavior of the emotional abuse is unacceptable. And just don't listen to those people, and go to your support network and ask people that you really trust. You can even start with your therapist, your physician, your divorce attorney, and be connected to these resources. And another way is to go to the Divorced Girl Smiling website and look up all my trusted professionals. You can read about what they do, and you can call them, and they'll be happy to help you.
Well, that's wonderful. I think this is so important. And, speaking from experience, because I remember not realizing what was going on within my own, my own marriage, my own relationship. And I just I started like breaking down. Now, and what was really weird was that, everybody around me thought we had this great marriage, right? They thought we had this wonderful, I mean, we looked like we were perfect. We had a wonderful home, beautiful home, baby, all this kind of stuff, everything great going on. But inside those four walls was totally different. What was happening with me was different. And I didn't really understand what was going on because, of course, I didn't realize I was being emotionally abused. And so, it started breaking down, becoming ill, getting all kinds of, like, my immune system started breaking down. It was crazy. And finally,
That happened to me too. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was going to say, finally, I went to the doctor one time, and I mean, my hair is falling out. Everything is happening to me. And finally he turned to me and he said, honestly, if you want to live longer, you might want to think about getting a divorce. And I never told him anything about what was going on, but I think he must have picked it up. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry we didn't even bring that up. Another sign of emotional abuse is your physical health.
Hmm.
In my case, I had horrible stomach pain, and I had to go for like an upper GI and all these tests. And they were like, you know what? It's just stress induced IBS, irritable bowel syndrome caused by stress. And when I got divorced, guess what went away? My stomach pain. Go figure.
Hmm. Oh, I got shingles. I mean, I cannot tell you. It was just unbelievable. And what was happening, it was just all building up, I think, within me. It's just, I just couldn't I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't know what to do about it. And
Mhm.
so this is why it's so important for us to share these kind of things with an individual so that they
And
understand.
I want to bring something up that might be helpful. Maybe Cece, you and I could both talk about how we got up the courage to actually leave, because people might be listening and thinking, I don't know if I can do this. What was it for you?
Well, I decided, okay, after the doctor said that, I thought, and we had a baby, he was little, and I wanted to see, I'm an older mom. And so I wanted to be around to see him graduate from high school, and all that stuff. Maybe go on. If I'm lucky, I'll have children. But, so I felt like I had to do it for him, not necessarily even for me. I had to do it for him. So I sat down with my ex. He loved to go on little vacations. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but he loved to go on little vacations and stuff. And so we do like little long weekends because we had our own business and it was hard for us to get away. So I remember sitting on the balcony and I said to him, I'm going to leave you if you don't start treating me right. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I told him everything I was going to do. And I said, I'm going to take X amount of money out of our bank account. I'm going to, whatever. I said, I cannot put up with this anymore. I cannot put up with you talking to me the way you're talking to me, treating me the way you're treating me. I said, I cannot do it anymore. And he just laughed at me. He said, oh, you'll never do that. You can't make it on your own. You can't survive on your own without me. You'll never do that. And he just laughed and everything. Then a little bit after that, he had to go travel somewhere. When he went to go travel, he and he got out of the car. I got out of the car, the SUV, and I was pulling his luggage out after I helped pack his luggage and everything. I pulled his luggage. He just stood there and looked at me. I pulled his luggage out, and he turned to me and he said to me, "You're only good enough to do my dirty laundry." That's what he said. I'll never forget it. I was at the airport. I was there. I had just put his luggage down. I was like struggling with it. And he said that to me. And he just took his luggage and he just left. And I mean, to this day, I will never forget the moment. Never. And
That is like just my heart just sank when you said that.
I mean, when he did that, something just
You,
snapped in me. And I
mhm.
called my daughter up. I got back in the SUV. I mean, I don't even think I was out of the airport parking lot. And I called my daughter. I said, "Can you come and help me? I'm moving. I'm out."
Wow.
And so that's what happened. My kids came over and to help me pack while he was gone. And I left. I left then. And after we packed and I was on the road out that I had moved. I said, "You'll find the car, because I dropped him off, right?" We took the other car to the parking lot of the airport. I put the keys under the mat, told him where to find it. I mean, I paid the bills. I made sure he was all settled. And I was just it just snapped. Something just snapped to me. I just couldn't do it anymore. That was it.
That's amazing. Wow.
Only
That's
good enough to
probably
do
really,
his dirty laundry.
that just made me sick. But I bet you there's a lot of people listening who are inspired by this story because I'm sure it wasn't easy, but I do believe you when you say that something kind of clicks and things have gotten so bad that I truly believe our biggest inner strength comes out and helps us and says, okay, I'm going to put you on autopilot and I'm going to take all of your strength that you ever had and I'm going to help you through it. And I think that God plays a big role in this. I think self-esteem, and if you think about all the wonderful people in your childhood who helped you, they kind of formed who you are and they bring that person out. And between God and those people and yourself, you just do it and you become on autopilot. And then once you leave that gate, that's it. There's no going back.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the feeling of being so relieved. And I was like, the whole time I'm shaking, I'm, packing up. I'm thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this. And then when we finally did, and my kids were so for it. I mean, they were just like, "Thank God, Mom, you finally come," because I have four older children than the little one. And he goes, "Thank God, that you finally come to your senses," because they could see me starting to go downhill. And so, yeah, but when we got in the car and we were like in this, I always felt like it was, you see that Hillbillies, where you got everything all piled up in your car and you're going, that's how I felt. And I felt so relieved. And I felt bad for my son because he was little and he just didn't understand what was happening. I felt really bad for him.
But you did him a favor in that you didn't let him grow up seeing his father treating his mother in an emotionally abusive way, which in turn would have continued the cycle. And he would have then treated his spouse the same way because that behavior would be normal for him. I'm not saying it's 100% guaranteed, but that is what the studies show. And that is what a therapist will tell you, that people treat people the way that they are taught in childhood.
Yeah. And for me, it actually was a pattern because at my first marriage, I was abused again, physically abused, and then this time again. And so that made me realize that it's not, I mean, even though the situation was, I'm not taking ownership of his behavior, but I have to take ownership of mine because I am stepping into these relationships and I'm not drawing a line in the sand and saying, "Whoa, wait a minute, back up. This is not how I am going to be treated. I am not going to be treated like this. So I have to understand that. And it's taken me, I've been divorced now for a long time. It's taken me a long time to heal and to be able to work on myself to get to where I am. And so I just feel like those out there that are listening need to understand that what's happening to us, we cannot control their behavior, but we can control how long we're going to put up with it and how we feel about ourselves to put up with it. So these are decisions they have to make. Now, what was our next question? Our next question, I think we had, what do you tell a victim when a family member says it's not abuse if he hit you?
Okay, so before I answer that question, I just want to say that I loved what you just said to your listeners, that you really, it takes a long time to heal. But what I want people to know is that that process has a lot of really good parts. It's not all like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be crying and devastated and grieving my marriage and being sad. And it's that, yes, that does happen, but peppered in with all of that are moments of empowerment. I'm so proud of myself that I did this. I'm getting the help that I need. I'm rebuilding my life. I'm meeting all kinds of wonderful new people. I'm happy again. I feel safe. I feel like I have a sense of self-respect now that I'm out of this toxic situation. So there are so many wonderful things that go into healing. It's not just all tears and being upset.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. What I realized was that I was always doing everything he wanted to do, right? So the career that we did, the job that I did was always focused around him. And I would get some really great jobs that I loved, right? And then I would have to quit because we'd have to move because of his job, or move because of him. But then I realized that this space that I'd given myself is that I really didn't like a lot of the stuff that we would do together. I did it because he wanted to do it, right? And so then I started thinking about, well, what do I like doing? What do I enjoy doing? And now here I am doing what I love. I absolutely love doing this job that I have now, which I would have never in a million years done. I would have still been probably working, his business, trying to help him be successful, right? And instead of doing what I truly enjoy doing. So I think that if we can step back, learn from our situations. I don't see necessarily mistakes, but learn from our situations, and then start carving out a new path, a new road for ourselves that we really truly want to do. And there's going to be ups and downs in it. Sure, there's going to be stuff, but get to the point where we love doing what we do. Like you're doing the Divorced Girl Smiling. I mean, you wouldn't have probably done that
Yeah.
if the
And,
situation hadn't happened.
and had I stayed, I would probably be a shell of myself
Hmm.
and I would not have had a happy life. And I knew that. And so it really has been a wonderful ride. I made a ton of mistakes after the divorce. I mean, everybody does. You make a ton of mistakes in life. I'm still making mistakes all the time, but I do a lot of things that are right and that are good. And when I see my children grown, they have become these amazing people. And I take a lot of pride in that because I was with them so much when they were young. And I hope I did good. And I think I did, just
Hmm.
based on what they're doing now and what kind of people they've turned into. So really, it's very rewarding. I'm so glad that my life turned out like this.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I feel exactly the same way. I mean, people that are in my life now wouldn't have never been there, and so I'm really happy with that. And again, with my kids, I have five, and they've all done real well. The youngest now is grown and in college, and so yeah. So and I'm excited to see where his future is going to go. And so yeah, they're all looking at me like, Mom, I can't believe you're doing what you're doing. And yeah, so they're all real thrilled with it. So there's a lot of pluses. I think when we begin to start taking control of our lives and start understanding what it is that makes us tick and what we like, and set our boundaries. We must set our boundaries as we move forward in life, and that's all very, very important. So what
Do
do
you,
we do?
should we get to this last question? Because we put it out there and then I never answered it.
Yeah. So what do we do if someone says, "Oh, they what was the question?"
What would you tell a victim who has a family member who says not abuse if he
Yeah.
didn't help you?
Right. And that's true because a lot of people do think that if you're not physically hit, nah, it's not really abuse.
Absolutely. And there are other kinds of abuse. Also, there's financial abuse, there's sexual abuse. I mean, there's definitely alcohol abuse, all different kinds of abuse that don't involve physical, and all kinds of abuse that combine physical with the other kind of abuse. So the answer to the question is, and Brittany wrote that this is very tough because it's hard when a survivor is put in a position where they feel like they have to justify themselves and feel like they're being judged. And in some ways, it confirms what an aggressor has said and taps into the sense that their reality and emotions are invalid. She said it's not uncommon to hear this from family members or other support people. So what I want to tell the listeners is don't be surprised. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't move forward with your plan of getting out of the relationship if that's what you want.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes you have to think that people don't really understand what you're going through. They don't really understand the circumstances. And so if they don't, if they say something that doesn't really resonate with you, then throw it away, right? Don't worry about it. You need to focus on what is important to you. And if you feel like something's not right, it's not right. If you feel like you deserve something better, you do. You know, I think we really have to get true and get true to the core of who we are, and and not allow all these outside voices to step forward.
I agree.
Yeah. So here's the hard one. Here's the last question, and the very, very hard one. How can a victim of emotional abuse heal? And I mean, we're going to go over our time, and if we do, so be it. So let's tackle that one.
Okay, so really, I love ending these interviews on a positive note because people do heal. And if you're listening to this, just look at Cece and look at me. We definitely have healed. Survivors often have depression, anxiety, PTSD, low self-esteem, low sense of self-worth, and many other adverse impacts of various facets of life. So Brittany says, I always recommend finding a good trauma-informed therapist to work through these challenges. And she encourages survivors to find a community, a support system where they feel heard, seen, and understood. There is power in numbers and knowing you're not alone. And for example, I'm just going to give your listeners an example. If you are married to an alcoholic who's abusive, go to Al-Anon. It is a wonderful support group. There are also support groups for every kind of abuse that you can imagine. And to find those support groups, you have to look at Google, but also you can go to Divorce Girl Smiling. You can ask my trusted divorce professionals if they know of groups. Being in a group and feeling heard and validated is important. And by the way, the Divorced Girl Smiling Facebook group page is a wonderful online resource. You can join the group and you can post a question. It's all confidential, and people in the group, you'll get like 15 to 20 responses from people saying, I had the same thing, blah, blah, blah. And you will feel so connected to people and so validated and so heard. And that's very important in healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very much. I mean, that's how this all happened, right? Is I joined a divorce support group, and there was like 5 of us, I guess, in the group, and it grew. And the lady then decided that she didn't want to do the group anymore. I took it over with a friend, and then she didn't want to do it, so I kept it. And so it changed my life because it made me realize that I wasn't the only person experiencing what I was experiencing, right? And so it made you a lot stronger to be able to do that. So definitely definitely it's something you definitely want to do. You want to really connect with someone. So it's like I've always said that you need to fill your well, right? Fill your well. You want to read good books, connect with good people, all it not only in the groups but all around you. Have that support team, and it's very, very important. We're going to have to run, but I want to make sure that all of the information is there for you. Just go to divorcegirlsmiling.com. Jackie, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm so appreciative of it.
Cece, thank you so much for having me.
It is so great having you. Again, we are part of the divorcecoalition.com. Check that out. Check out divorcegirlsmiling.com. And again, if you find yourself needing, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Support, resources, advice are right there for you. It's 1-800-799-7233. It's 1-800-799-7233. There's someone there 24/7 that can answer any questions that you have, give you any assistance that you need. Do not hesitate if you feel that your life is threatened and you need to get some sort of support right away. Most certainly do that. So again, we want to have you connect with Jackie at divorcegirlsmiling.com, and we're going to have to run. You guys have been listening to Going Solo with Cece. This is the goingsolomedia.com. We've been talking about victims of emotional abuse, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Catch us on the goingsolomedia.com. All of our wonderful hosts and guests are on there. So we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.
Bye bye.